Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to another We Wonder. And today's We Wonder is very specific. As we all are sitting here, and a lot of us have shifted to working from home for a long period of time at this point, we have the same discussion over and over again. How do we maintain that corporate culture when a lot of our employees are not used to working from home? And some of them have now been, so used to working in an office and they're working from home, and there's no light at the end of the tunnel. When do we get back in the office? Is it something we're considering now? Is it, 6 or 8 months from now? And the answer is we may not know that answer for a while. We don't really know. So the question we always have is how do we continue to build that environment, build that trust, and really that sense of responsibility amongst all of our employees. And as a leader, this comes up on a daily basis. Is everybody doing what they're supposed to do? And, do you trust them to do what they're supposed to do? That's a big question. It's all about trust. And would this have ever occurred if it wasn't for a global pandemic? So we have someone on today. It's a very special guest, and I'm very excited to bring Patrick Kelly on. Patrick is with Change Point Consulting, and you are the president, CEO, the main man there.
Yep, the main guy.
That's it. Well, welcome. Patrick and I have known each other for a very long time, and you developed a strong following in a couple different areas, and this is one of them, working with different companies and talking through their corporate culture. And so I'm very excited to have you on today's We Wonder. So thanks for joining, of course.
Yeah, it's great to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
You got it. Well, let's start off with a simple one, right? You work with a lot of folks out there, and everybody has a different take on how we're handling this corporate culture, piece. This almost, it's critical to the success of every organization is how they perceive and how they portray their own corporate culture and how everyone's adopting to a new environment. So tell us a little bit about some of the macro trends that you're seeing out there.
Yeah, so I think it's important to obviously start broad and to recognize what's happening, what's going on, some of the things that are temporary that will go back, some things that are permanent. Obviously, what you've seen in the last year, 6-8 months, is a huge shift from employee market to employer market, which for about 7 or 8 years, with low unemployment, it has been an employee market where you could job hop pretty easily, and there was always a better offer, around the corner. And you're just not seeing that now. It's just a lot tougher to jump. A lot of people are staying a little bit more secure because you just don't know what's going to happen around the corner. So you have people that are staying a little bit more close to home. You've obviously seen a fundamental shift in how people are working. This is a perfect example of doing online live webinars. We've all gotten very used to Zoom and Microsoft Teams and all the different kinds of platforms that we can meet online. We've realized that there's a new, unique way to work. There's been a shift in conversation around commercial real estate, which I think will be interesting over the next 5 to 6 years as companies start deciding, do we need huge footprints, physical footprints, or are we going to go to some kind of hybrid model? Are we going to go back and forth? And, all these kind of things that we're wrestling with are really going to dictate what is going to be best for a company moving forward. And I think really plays into that corporate culture you're talking about. And I think what's important to understand is there's no one right answer. I think people are looking for what is right. Are we going to always be remote? Are we going to go back to the office? The reality is you got to figure out what's best for you. And the example I always give when people say, what's the best culture? What do we got to do? It's like asking a room full of people, what's the best food in the world? You're going to get 30 or 40 different answers. No one's wrong, but you got to figure out what's best for you. So what I do is work with clients and figure out, okay, what is going to be right for you? How do you operate? What is the size of your team? Where are you geographically located? What's most important to your people? What's your business? Because the reality is if you run a bakery, you can't run a remote business, right?
Right.
So you got to start figuring out and asking questions about what it is that our team needs best, because at the end of the day, that's all that really matters.
Well, I love that response because it is an individual choice. And I know, in the very beginning, you're talking, March, and, we actually do all of the service for all of our agencies, right? So something very different than most firms out there. And when you do insurance, you usually have a lot of people internally that handle their own. We have a 100-person team sitting here at our corporate headquarters where I am today. And all those people are in-house about this close to each other, right? All of a sudden on one day in the middle of March, everyone needs to work from home. on one afternoon, we made the decision, and we had the continuity and the ability to put that in place and actually maintain a service level that was second to none, which was fantastic. But all those people are hired in an environment where we're all working together. We all have lunch breaks. We all have certain times a day. We come in, we come out. And now we're in kind of a unknown, right? Now we're working from home. And while we can monitor everyone's workflow, it's still a lot of it up to the employee. And some people are very comfortable with that, and some people are not. Some people can handle that from a workflow, and some people cannot. So I know you and I talked about that a little bit, setting those boundaries and those expectations. Tell me a little bit about that, from your perspective. How are people handling it out there?
Yeah, I think it forced there's no business in the world that wasn't fundamentally changed in the last 6 or 8 months, either positive or negative. Some industries and some areas have boomed and had incredible last 6 or 8 months. Some are very, very much struggling. And so I think as you look into this and when you're forced into change, there's no better opportunity to really look back at the roots and get back to the fundamentals of how do we act, how do we operate. And I think the biggest thing that we need right now across organizations, my number one recommendation is to think about those boundaries, as you said, is start talking and having conversations internally around what are our new boundaries looking like. Because when we all came into the office, there are some understood boundaries, right? We all come in around a certain time. We stay here till a certain time. We take lunch around a certain time. We take coffee breaks. If we need to walk across the street to grab a cup of coffee. We had understood boundaries, even informally, as I can walk down the hallway and poke into my head into your office and say, hey, Chris, you got a minute to talk, some of those things like that. Can't do anymore. So I think as an organization and as a leader is start being very clear on boundaries. When we talk boundaries is not only as a team, start thinking about how do we communicate? In what ways do we communicate? When do we email? When do we call? When do we direct message or instant message each other? Those type of conversations. Also being very cognizant about the time we block off on our calendars to make sure that we don't have work seep, I like to call. When we work from home and we live at home, it's very easy to live in this weird nebulous world where everything can happen all the time and it can be very hard to disconnect from work. So are we being very intentional about taking a lunch break or taking a half an hour in the afternoon to go walk the dog or taking time in the evening to make sure we have dinner with our family? I can't tell you how many people feel almost a sense of guilt in working from home. Like for some reason, I feel like I have to be available all the time because I'm here and my work computer's right there and it's next to my kitchen, or it's over here, that if I'm not available all the time, or if I take these breaks, that somehow I'm not being a good employee. And I think as a leader, you got to set the standard that we still want to be able to set those boundaries about how we communicate, where we communicate, and the breaks that we have within our teams. Because if we don't, then we just get burned out real quick. We feel isolated. We feel super lonely. And those people will not last very long.
Are there any, and again, we didn't talk about this before, any tips or tricks that some companies are using to really incorporate, team, I don't know, rah-rah sessions, team motivation, even though it may be over video? I've heard of some companies saying, hey, we're going to have a happy hour and we're sending to your house some of the ingredients to make, this particular drink or that particular drink or hot cocoa or whatever it is during the holidays. Just something so everybody has the same thing happening at the same time. We're all jumping on and we're going to do an employee meeting. We're going to talk about it. Have you heard anything like that going on out there?
Yeah, there's plenty. I mean, people are doing happy hours, of course. I've seen cooking classes that happen as well, where you can hire like an online chef that, again, they send you all the ingredients and you have like a big Zoom call where everybody cooks. I think those kind of connections are very important and allow you to still have informal conversations. I think maybe even blocking off intentional social time where I've seen organizations where it's happy hour type of thing, but you're literally not allowed to talk about work. Because what ends up happening is if you're connecting on Zoom, even with your work people, and it's happy hour, you just end up talking about work stuff and work problems. And, oh, did you do this? And, oh, we need to follow up on that. Where they set, again, very clear boundaries of we don't talk about work. Maybe we'll have a couple topics that we've come in ready to discuss, but we just, we won't talk about work at all, because you need to be able to disconnect. And I think, again, as a leadership team, if you're running a team, if you're running an organization, no matter how, if you're a team of 2 or if you're a company of 150, setting and creating clear expectations are wildly important. And I know that's something we touched on is there is, I feel a sense of panic within a lot of leaders and a lot of organizations where I can't see my employees every minute of every day anymore. Right. I used to be able to see you sitting at your desk. And it's an argument I've had over the last 5 or 6 years, a change point of, if we work from home, how am I going to know my employees are working? How am I going to know that they're not just messing around? Which to my point is, and you already hit on it, is, well, why do you hire them in the first place? If you don't trust them to work, why did you even hire them?
Right.
That doesn't make any sense. So as organizations, what we have to do is shift our thinking because we've changed so much. We have to shift our thinking of what we demand from employees. And what we demand from employees should not be input, AKA hours worked. It should be the output. So how do we shift as organizations to be crystal clear about what we want in return, or what the outcomes or what your job and your role require? Because we all work a little different.
Mm-hmm.
We were just talking about this before. I've become very much a morning person. By like 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I'm brain dead and I'm done. I got plenty of friends who don't operate until noon. I mean, they just, they don't function and they're much better at 10 o'clock at night. There's not necessarily a right or wrong, but figuring out, okay, if this is the end goal and this is what we need our employees to do, I'm going to trust you and I'm going to empower you to get it done the way that you think is best to get it done and in the time that you need to get it done. Because ultimately, that's what we're looking for. Did you do the job? Yes.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned that because I think, just like we talked about, businesses back in the Great Depression or the Great Recession in this case, it was the, 2008, 2009, 2010, where everything was depressed because of all the stuff that's going on between housing and banking and everything else. It developed a lot of efficiencies, right?
Yeah.
Not a period of time that anybody wants to relive. However, if you lived through it, you developed a lot of efficiencies because you had to. And, I think we've talked about this before. I think the answer is no way in hell this would have ever happened to this extent if there wasn't, a global pandemic, right?
Yep.
We're all in the same boat. We all have to see the same things. And as leaders, you have to make some decisions. And in my way of thinking, you develop a lot of efficiencies because before, I wouldn't call it being lazy. It was just the way we did it. Everybody got together. You have a meeting in here. Now we'll just let's all jump into a room together and do this. And the expectations are I can see you down the hall, so I can just pop in and say, hey, can you do this? Now I have to take a step back and be very intentional about what my expectations are on a day-to-day basis. As you mentioned, be very intentional and saying, this is what I expect from you overall. Now fit it into your schedule. Like you figure it out. But if I call you, I expect to get a hold of you, but you may be picking up your child or you may be doing different things because it's not a scheduled time. Mm-hmm. During that scheduled time, I'm expecting you to, be a professional, be in a room, have everything set up, not holding, a dog in one hand and then, at the grocery store while you're trying to do a Zoom meeting. Those are the type of expectations in the beginning I think everybody had to kind of get used to. Now, everybody knows how to use online chat. They understand what mute is finally, which is beautiful.
Maybe.
How to turn it on and off.
Yeah.
And be able to, to be able to operate as professionals. But I think people are getting used to it now. I feel like it's more of a rhythm. And I wouldn't say it's the new way of thinking, but it is something you've gotten used to. And so that's a good and a bad thing.
Yeah, I think what you'll see is you're exactly right. We've gotten used to a new way to do things. We've broken down a lot of barriers or what I call kind of the sacred cows, where there's a lot of preconceived notions that either leaders or companies had that they couldn't do. Like I can't tell you how many companies said there's no way we could ever be a work from home company or let our people work from home. Mm-hmm. Well, guess what? Everybody was forced to do that. And they've learned a lot of things, I think, on a company level, but also on the individual level. There's been new challenges. I know plenty of people who have gone to work from home and don't like it and can't wait to go back. And plenty of people who are like, I hope I never have to go back to the office again. They had a 45-minute commute each way into the office and sitting in traffic that now they're like, I get an extra hour and a half to 2 hours a day back. I don't have to drive, right? I don't have to do this or that. You got parents who are facing definitely interesting challenges where they have to deal with kids or pick up. Some people love it, some people don't. There's a combination of both. But I think what you hit on is very important. Is we are, I would say, even though we're more disconnected virtually, I think we're becoming more understanding of each other personally, because we're invited into each other's homes, because we know that we have different challenges. We know we can be more honest of like, I have to pick up my kids at 3 o'clock today because they're not at home. Or if they're virtual learning from home, I need to spend some time to help them out. And so this again goes back to that idea of measuring output versus input is trust your people, give them that vision. This goes back to culture as well. Create a clear vision of what you're trying to accomplish. Create a clear destination that you're going to, a clear mission, vision, behaviors, goals, objectives, and then set your people out to accomplish that. Empower them to do that and say, I don't care how or where. And as you said, be available during the day. You might be picking up your kid. That's fine. Just answer your phone. I don't expect you to be sitting at your computer for 9 straight hours, but I trust you. Here's our destination. Let's go there together, because that's really at the foundation of what a good corporate culture is not just the rah-rah or happy hour or the ping pong table, because let's be honest, those things lose appeal pretty quickly. Those are very superficial things. What really motivates people and gets them out of bed is feeling like you're doing something great with great people, right?
True.
Feeling like the work that you do matters and you're doing it with people that you care about. So you want to start building great culture is figure out how to inspire people to make them feel like what they do matters, and have them connect with the people around them to feel like they're part of that team. And you'll be great. I think a great culture doesn't withstand change. It knows how to adapt to change. This change that we have gone through is massive, maybe the greatest period of change in work ever. The goal is not to withstand. Any business that in March said, we're just going to kind of wait, we're not going to change anything, we're going to wait for this thing to pass over, is out of business or will be out of business soon. Mm-hmm. The companies that are succeeding are saying, we're driving headfirst in this change. We have to figure out and adapt to what we're doing right now. And so I think as you start thinking about those pieces as a culture, that's how you're going to be able to succeed and come out of this stronger than ever.
Well, and again, we've touched on a few of these points, but just to get a synopsis together, kind of what are the benefits of having a strong culture? I know that we've touched on a few things kind of around the edges, but let's talk about that. Why is it important to have a strong culture, and what benefits do you get as an employee, as a company as a whole? What do you get from it?
Yeah, culture is one of those. I mean, it's such a broad word and a broad term. A lot of people say a lot of different things, and too often it gets pushed aside as this soft skill, or this kind of like, oh, that's cute, or it's an HR thing, or it's the happy hour, or it's the company picnic, or it's the ping pong table. What culture is literally the operating system of your organization. You can have a great financial plan, you could have a great product, but if your people can't execute, it doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. And that really is the importance of your culture. The culture is what inspires and empowers and drives your people to get up every day and to do their best work. And the simplest term is everybody has had a position or a job where you wake up in the morning and you dread what you're about to do, right? Either it's the boss you have or the team you're on or the organization, whatever it is, where like you would drive into the parking lot and spend a couple minutes in your car giving yourself a pep talk, being like, you can do it. You can get through the day. Like, wow. You can, we've all had those jobs or positions where we're just not motivated. We don't like what we're doing. We don't like our boss. And it is so hard to be productive. It's so hard to put in any extra effort to really actually care about the outcomes. And on the other side, hopefully everybody's had a position where they've had a boss that's really mentored them, or a position they really care about, or something where you just like can't wait to do a great job. You can't wait to do more because you love the people that you do it with. So that is culture. Culture is the connection that we have. And so what we want to drive for, what we're looking for as an organization, if you're a leader, is how do you set a very clear destination of where you want to go? I call it kind of the Google Maps example, right? Google Maps is the most amazing tool in the world. Mm-hmm. It's saved me more than any times, but it only works if you have a start and an end destination. You can't have only one, because it doesn't know where you're starting from or doesn't know where you want to go. If you want to make culture change, if you want to grow your organization, you have to know exactly where you're at now and what are the struggles that you're having and where are you actually trying to go? What are you trying to accomplish? Who are you? What is your mission? What is your vision? What are those goals? Have you built in the structures and incentives that match that? We talked about this a little yesterday. Is you can't just say we want a great culture and hope it happens. You have to create a structure and a system that allows that to happen. And a great example that I heard from a client was they really wanted to make sure that people took paid time off. They had unlimited PTO, but they really wanted to make sure that people use that they were investing in that, and they were taking self-care time. And so what they did is they put their money where their mouth is, And then instead of just saying we have unlimited PTO, take vacation and leaving it up to that, they said, okay, if you don't take at least 15 days of PTO per year, you're ineligible for a bonus.
Wow.
Yeah. And so what they were saying and signifying to their employees and to their group is it is important that you do this. We want this to be important, that you'll actually get punished if you don't take vacation. And so I think as an organization, if we want to make culture important, we have to live by our rules and we have to follow the rules ourselves. And then we have to create the structures that allow that to happen. We'll start seeing engagement, we'll start seeing buy-in, and teams will come together and wake up in that morning with that feeling of I'm excited about what I'm doing.
That's a great example because I know that was always a dirty little secret, right? Kind of, from an HR or corporate perspective. Hey, let's, and a lot of IT companies do this. A lot of tech firms will say you can have unlimited vacation time, but you'll notice that no one's taking it. So, culturally, it meant take whatever you need, but just don't take it, right? So it actually ended up people taking less than 2 weeks a year because they're all so driven. And again, it takes a lot of discipline on the individual's part as well as the company's part, and a commitment to saying, hey, listen, this is important to you because we want you to be more productive down the road. So that's a great example, of a culture where people are, obviously committed to their employees. So that's a place you want to work for sure.
Well, and I think what it does is when we start thinking about culture is, let's go to that example, as you said, when they say there's unlimited PTO, but all the leadership never takes PTO, what do you think first, second, third, fourth year people are going to do? They're not going to take any time off.
No.
And so I would say your culture is actually measured. So the formal rule in that organization is unlimited PTO. Aren't we so great? But what actually dictates that culture is the informal rule of if you take PTO, we're going to kind of look down on you a little bit.
Right.
So how do you figure out within your organization that you match those formal and informal rules? Because we've all been there. I mean, there's plenty of organizations where, hey, we work till 5 o'clock on Friday. Everybody needs to work till 5 o'clock on Friday. And then you walk around the building and all the leadership is gone after lunch on a Friday. And you're like, oh, interesting. So I guess just I have to work until, right? We have to set the right rules. We have to make it equal for everybody. And we have to understand that if we expect things from other people, we need to expect them from ourselves as leaders as well.
Absolutely. And I love that example as well. I've worked in organizations like that in the past. So it's been interesting. So the next question for you here is, what does the future really look like? So crystal ball time, obviously, future cast this, but, we've had discussions about commercial real estate. We've had discussions about, people working from home and monitoring those folks and then trusting them and entrusting them to do their work and then, delivering on output. And then the question is, and again, this is always a struggle from where I come from. It's very easy if you and I work together for 10 years and then we all decide to work from home.
Mm-hmm.
No big deal. We know each other. We've had that familiarity. But what happens when you hire 2 or 3 new people and they're not familiar with the corporate culture or what the expectations are or some of the nuances that you really pick up in the office? Mm-hmm. How do you get that to them? And I struggle with that because I have a couple of new employees myself. And then I look at it and go, man, are they picking up all the stuff? Because some of it is just, I wouldn't say through osmosis, but really just, being familiar with the system, talking to people, running into that situation. And now that we're at home, that situation doesn't occur. Mm-hmm. So how do I make sure that they always get that? That's number one. But what does it look like for the future? I mean, are we all is it possible for us to unwind this? Is it after an experience on a global level, not just pockets, a global level? And we had this conversation early on, we have the best excuse in history to miss numbers, not deliver on certain things because no one's ever going to ask you a question. There was a pandemic, right? It's unbelievable. Yeah. But at the end of the day, that's not my job. My job is to deliver on those things. My job is to figure out a way to make that happen, make my people happy and empower them to do their work, which I have to say we've been able to do a tremendous job this year, at least here. Our product was very conducive to the environment and really offered opportunities, and we grow exponentially. That was all great, but I'm sure that doesn't exist everywhere. So what does the future look like? Can we unwind it? Are we all going to go back into working into tight environments and going to big conferences and traveling every week? I don't quite think so, but I'm curious to hear what you think.
Yeah, I would imagine it's some kind of hybrid. We're not going to go back to what we used to know in a 100% way. There's just the world's changed. We're moving forward, and it's just the response to any change, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, think of think of the technological changes of the last 10 or 15 years between smartphones, the use of Wi-Fi. I actually read a very interesting article. If this pandemic had happened 5 or 6 years ago, we would not have been able to hand it because the Wi-Fi system and like the literal broadband would not have been able to support so many people working from home and the tax on the system, which I think is crazy that we were that close to disaster. But I don't think we're going to go back. I think that it's going to be some kind of hybrid. We're going to rethink some things that we had to do, right? But a lot of business executives, I thought, well, I need to be in this meeting in New York. I mean, it's an hour and a half meeting, but I need to get on this flight. That's a 4-hour flight to get there for an hour and a half meeting and spend 18 hours in a day to go to an hour and a half meeting in New York is now absurd because we've gotten used to things like this. We've become, I think, more intentional with our time of like, that's a waste of my time. I'm going to Zoom. I'm going to jump in on a conference call. It's like I'm there and I can save myself 10 hours of travel. So I think we're going to rethink those. I think conferences are still going to happen. It'll be a little while, but we're rethinking ways to connect. And I think that that's what change always brings. I mean, think of any kind of market change or product change, any kind of innovation just makes us rethink how we need to act and how we need to operate. And so we're never going to go back to normal. What's going to be key for organizations is one, don't think that there's one right answer out there about what you need to do. My number one recommendation to any leader out there is start having internal conversations with all of your people and ask a couple really fundamental questions. A, what have we done great over the last 6 months? How have we been able to work better? What if in a perfect world, if we can go back, what do we want to change? Let's create a vision for what it looks like to act and operate. What's best for you as well is a great question to ask for people, because you're going to get some answers on different teams and they're going to be different things. Some people are going to say, hey, I'd love to be able to work from home 2 days a week. I don't think I can do it 5. I'm going to go out of my mind. I still need some of that social interaction, but I'd love to be able to work from home 2 or 3 days a week because it's easier on the kids. I can do a couple things. I can do the laundry during the day. I can go for a walk. Like, it's nice to not have to drive 45 minutes each way on those days. You're going to find some kind of hybrid. And then your job as a team and a culture is saying, okay, how do we give people what they need? Because Chris, if I give you what you need, and if I help you to feel best about how you work, where you work, and what makes you feel more motivated, there is no doubt that you're going to be able to, the output that you give to the company, to the organization, is going to be better, because you're just going to feel better about how, when, where, and why you work. And so I think as groups is start having those internal conversations. And I would say for your case study, when you're bringing on new people, it's hard being a manager. Everybody knows that. It's hard being a leader. But I think it allows us to not make assumptions anymore. Mm-hmm. We have to be very clear on expectations and understanding, instead of just relying on osmosis, is set clear expectations about how we act and operate. There's a great quote I live by that I think most organizations could learn from, which is conflict arises when expectations differ. Mm-hmm. All conflict is a variance of expectation. And when you're bringing on people and you make assumptions like, yeah, they're going to figure out they should know this is how we work, that this is what we do. If they're never told, or if those expectations aren't clear, there's going to be conflict, and there's going to be a tough time bringing those people on board. So I think with any new hire, and even in a remote way, is you have to just plan on spending extra time bringing them on board, setting clear expectations, and giving really clear feedback. Setting up with them very early on is like, hey, I'm going to be giving you a lot of feedback and maybe pushing back and training you. Don't take it personally. Just instead of being able to pick these things up by osmosis, as you said, by being in the office, you're not going to see that. So we're going to talk through, and I'm going to coach you a lot closer over the next 4 to 6 months to bring you up on board. Don't take it personally, but this is how we're going to be able to bring you up to speed.
Well, I think that's the most important thing we've all, if we were to encapsulate this, a lot of it is, additional communication is necessary, right? Yep. It's communication is king in this case, and over communicating. And I've worked in a distributed environment for quite a while. Even though I was at a headquarters office, most of my people were not. Mm-hmm. And so I noticed very early on that everyone felt like they were kind of on an island because everybody was in one place. Here it's a little different because everybody's kind of spread out, so it makes it a little easier. 2 things I've noticed with that is I can hire someone in anywhere, any state, anytime, any place, and people are moving. Like, people are moving from one area to the next because they're like, well, if I can work from anywhere, I might as well work from, the destination I want to retire in, or the area I think we're closer to my other part of my family,
Yep.
because I have to go in the office. That might be a temporary change. You may have made a permanent decision on a temporary change, but you're going to find out pretty quickly going forward what your company says.
Mhm.
At the end of the day, it really comes down to communication, communication, communication amongst the teams, and setting those expectations. And I think that's the thing I think we take away from this is, while everything changes, you still have the same goals, right? We all have the same goals, and we keep communicating that. We may have to go a different way to get there. There's no straight line for any of this stuff anymore. And again, that's what makes it kind of fun and challenging at the same time, right? It's not a, humdrum drive into the job, get my coffee, take the, now it's like, okay, I'm in my pajamas, but at least I'm wearing a nice shirt from here up. And
Exactly.
I went home this morning, and and I figured out how to get my camera working, and so I'm able to deliver this. And then, okay, that's over. Now I can get to work.
Yep.
So it's a completely different environment, and everyone probably is chuckling that sees this because everyone's experienced that, right? It's the whole different work environment.
Yeah, I'm sure half the people right now are wearing sweatpants. That's the new dress code.
Yeah. And they're shooting TV shows where people are, operating in this type of, environment, and they're, doctors are visiting clients, via Zoom, and then they're shooting some back end footage, and then they stand up and I'm wearing my fuzzy pajamas today because, I can, kind of thing. So again, I think a lot of people have enjoyed the change, and there's been some tremendous benefits of families being together and time you never would have spent. And then other aspects of it are challenging because we really do need to get back together more frequently, but maybe not as frequently as we have in the past. So
It's being, I think, more intentional with our time, right? When we were in the office, we had the luxury. We knew that we were going to be around each other for 40 to 50 hours a week. I think what we'll be now is we'll be more intentional with our time when we are together, right? And so maybe as a team, we're only in the office together 1 or 2 days a week. Well, we're going to make the most of those, and we're really going to be intentional about that. And again, it goes back to that point I said, is the best thing you could do right now is start having internal conversations, get everybody to map their future of what does a perfect work week look like inside the office, outside the office, how we're communicating, create that vision together, and then implement it. There's no right or wrong answer. Like I said at the beginning, right? There's no perfect food. If you ask everybody what their favorite food is, everybody's going to have a different answer. Figure out what's best for you. There's no one right corporate culture. There's no one right way to do things. The only right way is to figure out what's best for you and your team, and then actually implement it, follow through on it, and stay authentic to it.
Patrick, I have to say this has been a tremendous session this morning. And again, a very timely topic as we all deal with this as leaders, as businesses, even as employees are coming into those businesses. I want to find my place within the company. I want to find my place. I want to make sure I deliver, value on a day-to-day basis. And again, finding out where we fit and finding those expectations, I think are a key. And again, communication, making sure everybody's tied into that and everyone's on the same page. But been a fantastic. I put it up there, changepointconsulting.com. And again, very, very insightful, and again, very timely. And again, I can't tell you, we appreciate very much you joining us this morning. So
thank you so much for having me. It's been great.
You got it. Have a good one.
We'll see you.